I tell a story often about my first time. I was a Yale law student. I was coming down with this arrogant idea that I was going to help folk in Newark, and I was ready to go. I moved on Martin Luther King Boulevard in Newark, New Jersey, and I was sort of sobered by what I saw. And immediately I saw crime. I saw people using drugs. I had a window that faced on a room on the side of me, faced behind a crack house. A man named Bill Hoogtert, who's a friend, started a nonprofit in America called Do Something, told me, well, if you're in that neighborhood, there's a tenant president you got to meet. Her name's Miss Jones. And I went up to her door and knocked on her door, and I'll never forget, this Herculean voice, sounded like a UCLA linebacker, said, "Who is it?" And I said, "Cory Booker." And she opens the door, and again, I'm in my state of Ivy League arrogance, and she goes, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "Ma'am, I'm Cory Booker. I'm from Yale Law School, and I'm here to help you." And she looks at me like I'm crazy, and she took me down 5 flights of stairs in these projects and out in the street through the drug dealers, at which point I stood very close to her. And she wheels around and she says, "Well, what do you see here? Describe what you see in the neighborhood." And I said, "Okay," and I sort of described what I saw. I said, "I see a crack house, I see the projects, I see some drug dealers," which I said in a low and respectful tone, and sort of described the neighborhood. And then she looked at me and she said, "Boy," she said, "you could never help me." And she started walking away from me. And I ran after this elderly woman. I said, "What are you talking about?" And she goes, "Boy, you need to understand something, that the world you see outside of you is a reflection of what you have inside of you. And if you're one of those people who only sees problems and darkness and despair, that's all there's ever going to be. But if you're one of those people who sees hope, opportunity, love, the face of God, then you can step up and help me out." I came correct, as they say in my neighborhood, and I sat at her table and just started listening to this woman. And I always say I got my BA from Stanford, but I began to get my PhD in Newark, New Jersey. People think this is a spectator sport, being an American, that you can just sit back and watch what's happening in the middle of the arena. But it's not. This is about full contact, full participation, full involvement. Because we have, more than ever in our society's history, interwoven destiny. We're interconnected spirits, where the outcomes ultimately affect us all. I remember Colin Powell, I was listening to him in a group about this big. It was a dinner, maybe a little bit smaller, and at the end of him talking about nuclear proliferation, about terrorism, about the war in Iraq, I raise my hand and say, "Mr. General Secretary, sir, what is the biggest threat to democracy in the next 50 years, American democracy?" And the guy didn't even hesitate. He said, "The biggest threat to democracy is our inability to educate all of our children equal and high levels, concentrated poverty, and the separations that still exist in America between one citizen and another." No great nation fails because of simple external threats. I won't go too much into Roman history, but think about this. Let's go back even further. Year 69-70, the second fall of the Holy Temple of Jerusalem. Titus's armies took it. Read that story and figure out why that they really fell. Go to the Roman Empire, 400s, fall of the Roman Empire. Read that story. Find out why that civilization really fell. Go to the Soviet Union recently, our history. Why did that empire really fall? These empires never fall because of external threats. They fall because of internal corruption, because of a failure to manifest their ideals. And so what echoes in my ears every single day? It's these children that stand up. And they stand up in Newark. They stand up in Summit, New Jersey. Stand up in Harlem. They stand up in the Midtown. They stand up in Beverly Hills. And they say these words: "We are one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all." These words aren't real. We stand in a gap between the country we are and the country we aspire to be. Is it going to be a time of waiting to see who's going to lead the way? Or is it going to be where we remember how we got where we are now? We're here because of the sacrifices of others. We're here because King said it so eloquently, because change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability. It must be carried in on the backs of soldiers who were willing to fight for it. We're here because people knew, like Lincoln said, every boy is born an original, but sadly most men die copies. People who were willing to preserve their uniqueness and recognize the divinity in others. Now is the time for angelic eyes, like Miss Jones, who see our nation for who we truly are. Be the country of diversity, diverse ideas, diverse cultures, but can bring everyone together e pluribus unum for one common ideal and goal. This is our nation's destiny, and we are the soldiers, I believe, to get us there.